What's up, addicts? Welcome to the Fantasy Addiction Network. In this video, we're going to be telling you that Patrick Mahomes is awesome. Okay, I think that's all we needed to say, right? Okay, jokes aside, we're going to be looking at the fantasy outlook for what we can expect from Patrick Mahomes in 2020. And we're doing a lot of these videos, so do me a favor and hit that subscribe button for more in-depth analysis over the fantasy outlook of all the fantasy relevant players in the NFL. And check our website out, fantasyaddictionnetwork.com, for a full list of rankings. But without further ado, let's take a look at Pat Mahomes. Now, last year, a bit of a stat regression, and partially due to his patella dislocation, which, for those of you that saw the injury live, it looked like his season was over. So, for the Chiefs to completely turn things around and win the Super Bowl last year was pretty much a miracle. And a lot of that has to do with the play of this guy right here. Not expecting him to be able to replicate what he did in 2018. Obviously, hitting 50 touchdowns is an incredible feat that may take many years for him to hit again, or for all we know, he does it again this year. Who knows? So, passing touchdown or passing yards, he finishes just over 4,000. I mean, even though he missed 2 games, you pretty much want to consider him missing 3 games because he barely played any of that game against Denver where he dislocated his kneecap. Finishes the season with 26 passing touchdowns and only 5 interceptions, and has 218 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Now, I do believe that there's actually a good bit of untapped potential in his run game as well. We started to see a little bit more of that spunk in the playoffs, but with him dislocating his knee, I'm sure he took it a little bit easy in terms of the scrambles that he was doing towards the back half of the season. So we could expect there to be a little bit more rushing heading into 2020. Finishes the season with 291 fantasy points, 8th best at the position, and 20.8 points on average, 6th best. So you weren't necessarily disappointed if you owned Patrick Mahomes, but he did not return the value that you ended up paying for him, because most likely you had to take him as the first overall quarterback, which is typically not a strategy that we're going to advise. Now, comes out incredibly strong, finishing as a top 6 quarterback in 3 weeks in a row, and then 3 more weeks of quarterback 1 performances. And then the game against Denver happens. He dislocates his knee in the first half, misses the rest of the game, and is out for 2 consecutive weeks, and then comes back immediately against Tennessee and throws up 446 yards and 3 touchdowns, gives you another top 3 performance. And then from that point forward, it was a little bit up and down. And honestly, a lot of why Patrick Mahomes was not being used nearly as much, especially this year, was the Chiefs defense had taken a massive step forward in terms of their efficiency in yards allowed and points allowed. So we saw in the playoffs that Patrick Mahomes basically had to will the team to victory. He was doing that a lot more in the regular season last year in 2018. I mean, anyone that needs a reminder should just go watch the Rams and Chiefs game. That was a complete shootout. Those are the types of games that really propelled Pat Mahomes' crazy stat line in 2018. It just wasn't as much of a necessity in 2019 because the defense was actually doing their job this year. So, a few important stats to remember. Finishes the season with 68 deep ball attempts. That's 11th most, but again, that's not an average, so that's with missing 3 games. Deep ball completion percentage, a ridiculous 48.5%, giving him 3rd best among qualifying participants. Touchdown rate dropped drastically. We did expect it to drop because 8.6 where it was in 2018 was unsustainable, but dropping to 5.4% brings him back to the realm of human, I guess. But his playoff touchdown rate, again, going back to our original point, playoff touchdown rate 8.9%, and that had I still feel like it had more to do with the defense not showing up as much, especially against that game against Houston, where they just had to completely light things on fire and turn things around. That's the kind of Pat Mahomes that you want to see for fantasy. So 8.9% is an absurd rate, even higher than the rate that he had in 2018. So we're expecting there to be a little bit of a regression back to what he saw. Probably not above 7%, but definitely higher than 5.4%. Finishes the season with the 2nd highest adjusted yards per attempt at 8.6, 5th best pressure completion percentage, and fantasy points per drop back of .52 is 4th best at the position. So the guy is really good. You don't need me to tell you that Patrick Mahomes is good. The question is just how good. What we're anticipating is obviously that he plays a full year. I feel like this is a pretty reasonable projection between where he finished in 2018 and whatever happened in 2019 with the dislocated knee. As we said, expecting a little bit more in terms of the rushing game, closer to 300 rushing yards, but should be much closer to 40 passing touchdowns this season. Dipping below 30 was a little bit insane when you consider the offense that they have there. The addition of Clyde Edwards-Helaire should help with this as well. So wouldn't be surprised to see him go over 5,000 passing yards and 40 passing touchdowns again. We're just not going to project that high of a ceiling, but that would still give him 371.8 fantasy points, enough to make him the number 2 at the position or number 1 if you're playing in a 6-point touchdown league. Gives you all the upside that you could possibly need. The biggest problem, obviously, is he's being drafted right now in the second or third round, and there's very rarely a moment where it's going to return value when you're spending that high draft capital on a quarterback that you only need to start one. Obviously, we're not talking about 2 quarterback leagues here when we say that, but it's frustrating to know that you're not going to own him because there's not really any value in drafting him. If you play in a league that trades, I found that you can actually typically trade for quarterbacks that go a bit earlier once the team starts out that drafted him. If they start out and they lose a few games because their draft didn't go as well as they thought it was going to go, those end up becoming really good trade targets later on. So that's probably going to be the only way I personally am going to have any shares of Patrick Mahomes this year. But in 2 quarterback leagues, then he becomes very, very much worth a high first round pick. But outside of that, probably not going to own him, even though we anticipate him finishing very high. There's plenty of other replaceable quarterback options that aren't going to tank your team later on in the draft, and there's too much volatility at the other positions to pass up on it and have to jump to a quarterback. If he fell to the 4th round, I would definitely consider it. But there's just too many guys going in the 3rd round that I feel like my draft would be completely shot if I went quarterback in the 3rd. So that's my take. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching. Like I said, we're going to continue going through the entire NFL and hitting through over 100 of these. So hit that subscribe button for more content, and we'll see you guys in the next.